Well, everyone, I haven't really done an iOS versus Android comparison in a very, very long time. I typically do like Android 12 versus iOS 15, but for all the features and everything between these two, I'm going to be honest. If you're planning on buying an Android or an iOS device, things are starting to change a lot. And I think the last year and this year, for Android phones in general, they've been taking massive W's where iPhones have kind of been staying stagnant, in my opinion. And this has been a great time for Android phones. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, for iPhones for many, many years now, from like 2009 or 8 when these iPhones came out to now, I'm going to tell you guys, the iPhone series of devices has kind of hit a plateau. Some of the main features of iOS, things like security updates, the biggest thing was updates for a long period of time. You know that if you're buying an iPhone 13, this phone is going to be lasting for many, many years. It's not going to be outdated tomorrow or next year or the year after. This iPhone could potentially last 5 or 6 plus years. That's not even including security updates, which is so amazing. Now, though, and that was probably one of the biggest critiques of Android phones in general. This is a Pixel 6. Pixel lineups are amazing. Samsung's are very, very good as well. And these two are probably in the same tier. I mean, the Pixel 6 is cheaper, but the same price tag. With the Androids, that was also one of the biggest problems too. If you got an Android, it may not last that long, it may be outdated. However, there's never been a crazier time than now. Android phones, Google and Samsung both, have actually been adding some crazy capability when it comes down to the longevity. Recently, we just got Android 12. Android 13 came out in a developer beta, but Google is pretty much promising 4 years of updates for their Android software and 5 years of security updates. So that's an extra year of security updates on top. And Samsung just did the same exact thing. Samsung just went ahead and did the exact same thing. They're doing 4 years of OS updates and then 5 years of security updates. And that is incredible. Before, we would only get like 2 years of updates and maybe like 2 or 3 years of security updates too, which was good. But then that kind of became a meme for Androids. And now one of the biggest problems has now been fixed. So when it comes down to the raw software, right? iOS versus Android, iOS has been amazing for a long period of time, and so has Android. But Google has pretty much been fixing, and Samsung too, have been fixing one of the biggest issues, which was the updates. So before we even get into the features or anything like that, that has been one of the biggest improvements Android in general has been doing. But another thing is actually within messages. Now, it looks like Google is starting to improve a lot when it comes down to the actual messaging software. They've been doing a lot of improvements here. iMessage, I think, is still number one, but Google has been doing a lot of improvements here, which is really cool. But another thing just to remember is that Google has been adding the liked messages if you react to certain things within Android. That has now been improved. And now that Samsung is pushing out the Galaxy S22, it looks like the stock messaging app there is also the Google Messages app instead of the Samsung one. It may have a skin over it, but it's still at its core the Google Messages app. And that is another big advantage. If Google can go ahead and have everyone using the same, messaging app for the most part, that is a massive feature, and it can be almost like iMessage for Androids. I think that would be amazing. However, I've been kind of, talking a lot about Androids. I will tell you, iOS still has a lot of features for sure. One of the biggest things when it comes down to the updates for iOS is actually with the updates specifically. For Google and for Samsung and everything, when a Google Pixel 6 gets an update, potentially the Pixel 5 gets an update, the 4 gets an update, and everything like that. But there are so many Android phones, especially from Samsung, that if the Galaxy S21 gets an update, it could be a while before the S20 gets an update. It's a while before the S10 gets an update. And even with S22, once that gets an update, it may not be the same time the S20 gets an update. And it's just kind of this all over the place for sure. And that's kind of one of those things to keep in mind. So when it comes down to this specific update, I'm pretty sure that, but the thing with the iPhones is that if you actually go ahead and, for example, if you go ahead and update, the iPhone 13 and there's an update for it, the iPhone 6S from like 6 years ago can also get an update as well. 7 years ago can also get an update. Whichever iPhones are supported for that version of software, 99% of the time, all those phones gets an update. So that's a big thing. There are some rare exceptions where, an iPhone 13 may get a specific update and it may not come for the other ones. Maybe there was a specific problem with this, but for almost every single major release and every single update, they all get the update at the same time, which is amazing. And I do think Apple cares more about older phones from them rather than like on the Android side. But now Android is picking up, like I mentioned before, which is a big thing. Now, when it comes down to the features and everything between them, I think most of you know by now, they all have their pros and cons. They have pretty much the same applications you can install. It really just depends if you're already in the Apple ecosystem or not. I know a lot of people who have an Android phone, but they still use AirPods and Apple Watches, and maybe they own a MacBook. But I also know people who have iPhones that own things like, Windows devices, or they, have like a Google Pixel Buds or Samsung headphones or Sony headphones even, like, they're not really engrossed in the Apple ecosystem, so I don't know if that's completely, like, a crazy big deal anymore. I also do think that Apple's kind of been slowing down in the features they've been adding. I think one of the biggest things they've been doing is, like, universal control. That's a really cool thing, but that's not really on these iPhones or phones in general. One of the things that Apple's been lacking a lot in with the, recent versions of software, and look how I'm holding my phone, is pretty much with, is pretty much with the features within the software. Google hasn't really been adding crazy amounts of features either, to be honest, but they've added features that have been standing the test of time. One of these things is split screen multitasking. Having the ability of just quickly split screen multitasking between applications is amazing. And honestly, it shouldn't even be this crazy of a feature. It should automatically be here for all of our devices. The iPads have it too. Our iPhones, for some reason, they haven't gotten this feature yet, which is very upsetting. I would have expected to see this feature coming out for these devices by now, and that is not quite the case, which can be unfortunate for a lot of people. For one, I would love to see Apple, starting to add a lot of these improvements from Google, but also another big thing from Google is the ability to install the own applications that we want to install. We don't have to go through the Play Store to actually install the applications that we want. On the App Store, we don't have any choice, so we can't really sign IPA files, are the same anymore like it used to be. So having the ability to, install our own APK files is amazing. But I don't really find my Google phones being super, virus full or malware full, like how Apple's kind of describing it. So I feel like I have more control over my Android phone than on my iPhone. But I like having a secure and stable phone from iOS. I will tell you, from pretty much all the phones that I've owned in my life, iPhones are the main phones that I use, and they're way more stable than a lot of Android phones. Although you get a lot more features on Android and everything like that, you are getting a little bit more stability. Anytime I open up any applications or anything like that, I'm getting a really good experience from something like my, iPhone 13, so far. Funny enough, I had this issue on my, Pixel 6 with Temple Run 2 would crash. I don't know if that's going to happen here too, but it's just been kind of like unstable here and there, like right there, for example. Again, it's not anything crazy. I'm sure it's going to be, there's apps crashing on the iPhones all the time too, but I feel like I have a more stable device on something like an iPhone and like on iOS. So in my opinion, I like both. I like how both stand right now. However, for the last year and a half, I will say Google and Android in general has been making moves. They've been, kind of catching up and sometimes beating Apple in a lot of different things. So when it comes down to Android or iOS, for the last year or two, Android has been making moves. A lot of Android manufacturers, Google, Samsung, whatever other ones there are nowadays, they've been making a lot of improvements here, which is really cool. So if there was like an award for like best improved software, I would definitely give it to Android. They're really improving. But I still think iOS is here to stay. I think if iOS 16 is like a really, really tremendous version of software, well, there's going to be a lot of improvements there, and I'm going to be really happy about it. I would still prefer something, like more features from Android onto iOS, but either or, I'm a big fan of iPhones, I'm a big fan of iOS. I don't plan on fully switching over to an Android phone anytime soon. However, I would love to see Apple starting to implement some of the things that Android phones have. Now that Android has been implementing a lot of things that iPhones have, like long software updates, long security updates, different things like that, multiple supported devices too, that's another big thing Samsung's been doing. I would love to see Apple starting to copy a little bit more from Android, to be honest. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I would love to see that happen. So in terms of that, that's kind of a breakdown of how iOS and Android kind of hold up in 2022. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.